Hola, me llamo Mallory Maynard. I'm the founder and CEO of Gibbly, which is an education company that's focused on helping teachers spend less time building lessons and exams with the help of AI. I'm so honored to be here today. I wish I could have come in person. I had the pleasure of visiting Guadalajara and the university in September this past year with the Canadian government on a trade mission to Mexico. And Guadalajara, in particular, now has a special place in my heart because it's where my fiance proposed to me. So I can't wait to come back and visit in person, but I'm looking forward to spending some time with you virtually today. So thank you so much for having me today to speak with you about AI in Canada. So here's the agenda for today. If you'd like to follow along with the slides in Spanish, I've actually translated them for you here. So you can scan this QR code. And at the beginning of the presentation, you'll find a copy of all these slides in Spanish. Full disclosure, I used AI to translate the slides, so hopefully they make sense or at least are close enough. I am learning Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish well enough to vet them, so hopefully they're okay. So just scan this QR code and you should be able to follow along in Spanish if you prefer. I wanted to kick off with some of the numbers we're seeing out of Canada with regards to AI adoption by students as well as teachers. And then I've kind of put in some fun case studies that stood out to me as great applications of how both educators and students are embracing AI to solve specific challenges that they're facing. And then we're going to tie it all together to discuss the future of work and how Canada is embracing AI innovation. And finally, I just want to leave you with some of my favorite tools. So hopefully you can try them out yourself. I was hoping to do this live, but you will now have a copy of this presentation. So please don't skip to the next slide. Give me your best guess. What do you think the percentage of students are that is using AI? So these are Canadian statistics, but I'm making an assumption that the students in Mexico are quite similar. So before you move to the next slide in the presentation, put your vote in. Let's see what you think. And I'll just wait a second or two before I move on so you can have a chance. And the answer is actually 59%. So 59% of Canadian students are using generative AI according to a recent study. And I'm sure the numbers are fairly similar as they are in Mexico. And the majority of Canadian students have embraced AI and are using it quite frequently. So 63% of these students are using it at least once a week. Maybe what is pretty interesting, whether or not it's true or not is interesting, but 75% of students think that it's actually improved their quality of work, which on a surface level, maybe it is positive. We're going to have to do more research into this to see if the quality of work has increased or decreased. But I've listed some of the most common use cases for how students are using generative AI in the classroom in Canada. So the top three are generating ideas and using it sort of as a brainstorming tool for creating assignments and papers. Second up is research, so helping them do research, collecting different information from different sources. And then editing / reviewing. So maybe they're using tools like Grammarly to check how well their papers are with regards to grammar. The two at the bottom here that I've highlighted in red, at least on the surface level, they seem a bit alarming if teachers aren't aware the students are doing it. I know generally the consensus among teachers that students are cheating, and I know that's been a lot of the buzz in education. And it does seem, to at least some extent, students are using AI tools to cheat. I think there's been some research to suggest that the prevalence of cheating has not necessarily increased, but more the style in which students are cheating. So these last two certainly do suggest that that's true. I should say, though, the writing essays one for this particular research paper, they didn't split out if the students were using generative AI to help them structure an essay or actually just write the final product. And in my opinion, these are two vastly different things, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But this last one, at least on the surface level, seems bad. Students shouldn't be using generative AI to do tests or exams. What I did find pretty alarming about these stats is that 82% of students claim AI outputs as their own work. So they will take generative AI outputs and they will say that they did that work, which of course leads to potential issues around academic integrity and plagiarism violations. And maybe surprisingly, only 63% of students are actually worried that they will get caught. So, what are teachers supposed to do about this? And I think that is the pretty common concern among educators is how can we possibly combat this? So, although it's going to take a lot more work for educators in the short term, there's actually a pretty good solution that several universities in Canada have adopted, and that is redesigning how assessment works and actually letting students use AI in certain contexts. So, the example I have here is the University of British Columbia. They have put together a new model for how to assess students, and they actually allow students to use AI. They've accepted that generative AI use is here to stay, and instead are allowing students to use it in specific use cases with specific guardrails in place. On top of that, they are changing the way that students are assessed and to make the assessments more AI proof. So if you look at the scale on the right, I've actually added this reference at the end, so feel free to do further reading if you choose to. But basically how it works is they give students a color-coded system to help build trust among the students. So they allow students to use AI for certain parts of an assignment where the teacher sees fit, and then not at all where they don't want them to use it. So they've also been changing how they assess students. So in some cases, rather than sending home take-home essays or exams, they make them do all of this stuff in class, the good old-fashioned way with a paper and pen. Or they do more projects that um, require more thinking and more presentation skills. So they often are doing more project-based learning or presentation-based in nature, so that the students have to show in person that they understand the material. They may also split out, say, a large essay into multiple steps so that the students have to explain their thought process each step of the way. And the ultimate goal is actually to give less weight to the final product. So not give 40% to an essay, and instead split it out into smaller steps so that the students are weighted at each step along the way, and they have to be able to explain why they're doing things the way they're doing. So it's more about the process instead of the product. So I wanted to share this really nice quote from Panos. He is an educator from Seneca College, which is a college in Toronto, here in Canada. And I had the pleasure of speaking with him. His role was basically to leave the classroom. He was put on sabbatical for, I think, a couple of years to study AI adoption and innovation at the school. So he was trying to understand student and teacher sentiment around AI with the goal of ensuring that their students are prepared to excel in a future that is dominated by AI tools. So he was really early in this work, even at that time, and his findings were that generative AI meant that we would need to change education as we know it, and we can no longer rely on old systems that we've been using, and it will require educators to transform how and what they assess. So his quote is, "A lot of educators think generative AI is going to bring the end of education, and they're right. It's ending education as we know it." So I love this quote because although at first glance it may seem really scary for educators, they will have to change their practice significantly. But to me, it also means that we'll have an opportunity to teach students the skills that are considerably more transferable, like how to be good at researching, how to think critically, how to present, and how to communicate effectively, and how to leverage technology's tools to solve incredibly complex challenges. So I hope this quote doesn't make you stick your head in the sand, and instead encourages you to think of new ways to test student understanding that will drive them to be more innovative. The issues we face in this world are incredibly complex, and by actually increasing the complexity and challenge of student assignments, you will help your students be better equipped to solve these incredibly complex challenges when they enter the workforce. And students are eager to see schools adopt more AI. So for example, in Canada, based on this study, 65% of students, they wanted some type of tool that could help them plan out their skills and career planning. 54% wanted some kind of AI tools that could incorporate AI to help them with onboarding and school orientation. 52% wanted more AI support in the admissions process because they found it confusing. And 52% wish they had some AI tools that would help them plan out their courses and their school year so that they know which courses to take and when. So I actually found one of the universities here in Canada was a couple of students actually took it upon themselves to try to solve this problem. So we have a university here called McMaster University. Two of their engineering students, under the supervision of a professor, they created a custom GPT that's based on a problem they themselves were facing. So as students, they noticed how challenging it could be for students to choose the right courses or even understand what courses were offered at which time. So they created a custom chatbot that could act as sort of a general advisor to students, providing them with detailed insights into course offerings, the different prerequisites, and even potential career paths they could take with these courses. I thought this was a really nice application that students used to solve a very specific problem they were facing. And in my opinion, this is what using generative AI is all about, finding solutions to problems that are, annoying for people to deal with. And generative AI can make this possible by solving these particular issues. So now for another quick survey. Again, I wish we could have done this in person, but if you have the slides, you can actually click on it and I'll see your results. So don't skip to the next slide until you've answered this poll. So which percentage of students do you think would rather ask AI than their professor? This is one of the stats that really stood out to me. So I'm curious, what do you think? Before you move to the next slide, what percentage of students do you think would rather ask AI than their own professor? And the answer is 70%. 70% of students in Canada, at least the ones that were surveyed, would rather talk to AI than a human. So they would rather talk to AI than ask their professor for help. So some ingenious professors have come up with a solution for this, knowing that their students don't want to talk to them, even though they probably should. So many professors in Canada are creating these custom Ask a Professor GPTs. So these just within OpenAI. So these GPTs are trained on previous emails, which I'm sure have all the private details removed. They have the course materials in there. They also have given specific instructions on how to reply. So it's very similar to how the professor themselves would reply. Some of the benefits of doing it this way is that students get immediate feedback and they don't have to wait for an email response or meeting time. They can get immediate answers to their questions. Well, I think this is super cool and a great way to solve a real particular problem that students are facing. My personal opinion on this is it's probably going to negatively affect communication skills, at least in a little bit, and be prone to incorrect responses. But we'll just have to wait and see what the research says. Maybe as the AI models improve, this will become even better. And the professor can also probably have access to some analytics so that they can understand what kinds of questions the students are asking so that they can get ahead of them in the classroom. Students are also taking matters into their own hands and creating custom study tools in ChatGPT. So this is an example that I found. There is a GPT that's trained on course materials. It's created by a couple of students, or one student at least, from the University of Waterloo, which is another university quite close to Toronto in Canada. I can't tell exactly what the student uploaded, but it's likely that they uploaded, textbooks if they were able to, lecture notes, teacher presentations, and any other resources that they were able to into the back end of this. And it's for a specific course at the University of Waterloo. So now students enrolled in this course can interact directly with this chatbot. They can ask for elaboration. They can ask for study guides. They can ask for practice tests. They can use it as their own personalized tutor to understand this course. So I know we won't be able to do this live, but I am super curious to hear how often you use generative AI as an educator. I know that students are using it a lot, but I would love to know how much you are. So I will come and refer to this later once a few people have filled this out. But please let me know, how often do you use generative AI, and then we'll see how close it is to the Canadian numbers. So in Canada, it's almost exactly opposite of student usage. So 56% of teachers say they never use generative AI, like not at all. Only 10% say that they use it frequently. So even though students are eager to adopt AI and are using it, and they even want schools to adopt AI in more meaningful ways, that's not what we're seeing among teachers in Canada, at least not yet. So and I think it's safe to say that teachers are nowhere near the levels that students are, and it's actually completely opposite. Um, I'm sure, like, I don't have the numbers out of Mexico, but I would probably guess they're, pretty close. And, some of the reasons are pretty apparent. 78% of teachers haven't received formal training on how to use AI. And teachers, I know personally that teachers have so much on their plate. So I'm not surprised that if they're not receiving training, that they're not using it as frequently as they should be, or as they could be, rather. But 77% of educators in Canada believe that they should be trained. And actually, the teachers who use it frequently, they value it so much that they're a higher proportion of this number. So the teachers who use it often actually believe that all of their peers should be trained on how to use AI because they think it can add value to their peers' lives. And 49% feel like they don't even know enough to use it. So because they don't have the training, they don't feel confident to use it. Teachers are not using it as much as they could be. And although students are finding great applications for, writing essays and doing stuff that I know educators maybe not necessarily wanting them to use it for, teachers have a lot of opportunity to make their lives better with generative AI as well. And which is actually something I want to highlight. So really in Canada, one of our biggest thought leaders on AI adoption in primary and second schools is Ottawa Catholic School Board. The director of education is Tom D'Amico, and Ottawa Catholic is located in Ottawa, in Canada's capital. And he's really been leading the charge on this. In his opinion, generative AI should be treated the same way internet or electricity is being treated. It's here to stay. And to bolster confidence and usage among teachers, he's given his teachers a lot of guidance and guidelines on how to use it, regular training on how to use AI effectively, and he's letting them use tools, that have been vetted safely. And he's also providing training on how they can teach students how to use it safely. So a couple of months ago, I went to an event at their school board, and he provided a really nice story that resonated with me. It's more relevant for younger students, but it's still a nice way of looking at it. And it's a good way to reflect on, the state of AI and how it can help student learning. I know we talk a lot about how it may be detracting from student learning, but there's a lot of opportunity for it to help student learning. So this was his story. If a student goes home and they need help with their homework and they ask a parent or sibling for help, most educators would see that as a positive use of resources. But what about the students who don't have that support system at home? That's where AI can become incredibly powerful. In his opinion, we should value a student asking AI as much as you would value asking a parent, sibling, or friend. I just thought it was a really nice quote to sum up how he is thinking about AI in his head. He thinks it has the potential to help more so than it has the potential to hurt student growth and learning. But he also has done some kind of less obvious use cases of AI that have really helped to build community. So Canada is an incredibly diverse country, and many parents, including many new Canadians, have limited English and French proficiency. And so one of the things that he did is he created a really nice a message for Christmas, a really nice video that he wanted to share. And they could have just, added captions in other languages to accommodate other parents who didn't speak English and French very well. But instead, they actually used an AI software solution that took that entire video, and it was redubbed the entire video. So it sounded like he was speaking in Spanish or Arabic or the other languages that he listed. And it all happened in a matter of seconds. So now every parent and student could listen to this really nice and heartfelt message and feel more connected to the community. So I really liked his application of this. I think a lot of people in education have sort of demonized AI as this bad thing, but it can bring a lot of good and a lot of community building. And really, that's what I hope you take from this talk once I'm done, that it has the potential to do a lot of good. There are some things we have to work through, but it has a lot of potential to dramatically improve education. And I just wanted to give a quick case study on what we've been able to accomplish at Gibbly and the impact. So, like I said, I think AI has the opportunity to help students, but I also think it has the opportunity to really help teachers with a lot of things, like helping them grade faster, helping them create learning resources faster, helping them spend less time planning, helping students, help finding interesting ways to help students succeed. And I wanted to just spend a quick moment talking about Gibbly and the impact we've had in a short period of time. So our goal really is to help teachers take advantage of some of the amazing benefits of using AI by helping them spend less time creating resources, but also helping them build more engaging learning experiences for their students in a fraction of the time. So to give you like a little backstory, we founded the company on November 1st, 2022. And at the end of that month, ChatGPT was launched. And very shortly after, maybe a week or so, we completely changed our approach and we started building AI tools for educators into our platform because we believe that AI can dramatically improve teachers' lives, and I think it shows in these numbers. So to date, Gibbly has helped over 21,000 teachers. Many of these teachers have found us organically because their friends have sent them our way. We're in 175 different countries, and we estimate that we've saved teachers over 200,000 hours of prep time creating presentations and quizzes. And with our new integration in Canva for education in the apps marketplace, we really think that we can dramatically improve teachers' lives in delivering high quality education in a fraction of the time. But I want to bring it all back to, why do we care? Like, we know we can save time. We know that students are using it, but why should we care about generative AI? And I've seen article after article after article about students need to learn generative AI, and we should be teaching them generative AI, and we have to figure out how to promote and nurture student use of generative AI in effective ways to help prepare them for the future of work. And based on what Jason Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, he certainly seems to think so. He famously said recently, "You're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to someone who uses AI." And while I personally agree with this statement and think all students, should be taught how to use AI effectively and safely, along with, the ability to think creatively about the output, I was actually in genuine shock with the next stat that I'm going to show you. So I wish I had another poll, but before I move to the next slide, just put in your head what is the percentage of jobs that you think mention generative AI in Canada? The percentage. So what percentage of jobs mention generative AI as a skill, as a required skill in a recent study? So the answer, at least in my opinion, is pretty confusing. I was surprised by this. So less than 1%, 0.29% of Canadian jobs in January 2025 mentioned the need for generative AI. So that is very little. That is so little. Less than 1% recommended a skill set in generative AI. Having said that, like while this number is low, I still think all students will need to hone their generative AI skills, even though the data shows that the workforce hasn't actually caught up yet with the hype. So the private sector, it's not there. They don't care about the hype of generative AI quite yet, even though there's been so much talk about how generative AI is reimagining the future of work. I just want to put this into perspective. Like, that's not what we're seeing yet. But I think we're in the early days still. So what was interesting about this study for me is that 58% of the jobs that mentioned generative AI were STEM jobs. So fields like science, technology, engineering, and math. So jobs in mathematics, data science, software development, and scientific research were among the jobs with the most mentions of generative AI. So hopefully this graph is large enough. I've also included it in the references if you want to check it out later. But proportionally, STEM jobs, they only made up about 6% of the jobs posted in Canada, but they accounted for 58% of the jobs that mentioned generative AI skills, generative AI as a required skill. So my prediction is that since these industries are typically, pretty innovative, they're working on cutting edge technology. What we're seeing here is actually these industries are the early adopters of generative AI in the workforce. And it's just a matter of time that the rest of the industries follow suit. So, and I have a feeling that this is true because although I don't have the data to back it up, anecdotally, I've talked with plenty of people who work in business, who work in marketing, who are self-employed, who just stand by using generative AI to make their lives easier. So I think we're still in the early days. I've seen what the private sector is up to, but I think these numbers will dramatically increase in the next, 2 to 3 years. And I think Canada as a country agrees. So even though the private sector hasn't really caught up, bolstering AI capacity and innovation is important to the Canadian government. So in April of 2024, our former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, then Prime Minister at the time, he committed $2.4 billion in the upcoming federal budget to build AI capacity in Canada. So he said, we want to help companies adopt AI in a way that will have positive impacts for everybody. The way that the funding is going to work is the majority of it will go to compute capabilities and infrastructure, but there will be portions of it that are reserved for AI safety and to boost adoption in specific sectors like healthcare, agriculture, and technology. So Canada is ready for AI adoption, even though the private sector hasn't caught up yet. The students seem to be leading the charge on this, which isn't really surprising. So to round this out, I wanted to just say AI is here to stay. If you're anxious about using AI yourself, don't be. It has the potential to help solve a lot of challenges in the education sector. And even if you're unsure where to start, don't worry about it. We're all learning in this, so you don't need to feel like you're behind. Everyone is behind, except for maybe the students, but it's all going to be okay. Your students are, statistically speaking, probably using AI, whether you want them to or not, but it's going to become a skill they will need in the future. So why not work with them to hone those skills and help them become better equipped for the future of work? So that's everything for me today. I wanted to leave with you a few of my favorite tools. I've linked them here in the presentation. These are the ones on the top are my go-to tools that I use all the time, and the ones on the bottom are ones that I just use for fun sometimes. They're all linked in these slides, so if you want to try them out, I urge you to do so and see for yourself. And that's everything. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I wish I didn't have technical issues and I could have actually hopped on to get some questions for you. But if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. This is my LinkedIn, so please connect if you want to follow up or you have any, ideas or questions or thoughts about what I said. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And if it's helpful, I can also share a PDF copy of this afterwards. And if you scan this QR code, you'll also get a copy of the slides. So thank you again so much. It's my absolute pleasure. And adios.